right, so let's just kind of get into it here. The first topic we're going to talk about, the big one that I think is really, really big, is this here. Zack Snyder was, for lack of a better term, attacked this past week by a Rolling Stone article and trying to figure out who benefits from this at all. But we're going to kind of go through some of the major major points from this article, because it really pissed me off. I was really, 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 really pissed off
100%.
from this article.
We just spoke about it live. Definitely something that was hard to digest and hard to read. So,
yeah, this article released on July 18th, which is a very interesting day because if you know, for the past 3-4 weeks now, it's been hyped up that the digital release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, at least in the United States, was coming out on July 19th. So this article drops one day before that happens to go on sale digitally. Now, what is really, really interesting is the night before this, a friend of the show, a friend of ours, actually was contacted by somebody who stated that there was going to be a hit piece dropped on the 19th, and that it was very much so done at the behest of Jeff Johns and John Berg. So that is kind of the background of this report right now. For those of you who have watched this show or followed this show at all, we have really dissected the Snyder Cut movement and Zack Snyder, what happened with all that. We really dissected that for the past couple years. But this article attempts to shed new light and a different view on those events that occurred over the last, really since 2017. So let's kind of hit some of the highlights here. And Ken, I'm going to let you go first and kind of just talk about this article, what you saw, what you find odd and misleading. So go ahead.
So yeah, I find it interesting, just like you, that the timing of this is all too familiar. You know, we've become accustomed to Warner Bros. Having extremely convenient timing when it comes to things. I believe, I could be mixing it up, but I do believe that when one of the first Ray Fisher stories to come out of the Warner Bros., I believe they dropped something that Jason Momoa was going to be being I forgot the character.
Frosty
the character
the
is not getting off the top of my head, but yes, Frosty the Snowman. And this is just kind of eerily, it's just a step above this. And to me, this article was personally grotesque to read. You know, you always try to have a positive light in terms of what we did in the Snyder movement, and for this to be shed in this type of light, and this shameful light, for lack of a better term, is worrying and troubling. Honestly, it will delve into everything that they've hit on for sure, but I think it's something that are just. It's interesting. It's interesting the plot points that are brought up in the article. You know, there are things that are relevant to the real world in terms of social media, and the article kind of, one of the major findings that the article was that, and we'll get into numbers later, but that a decent amount of the support on social media accounts was driven by bots, and obviously the Snyderverse fans have taken that to another level and kind of created their own hashtag of like Snyderbot or something like that. So that's always fun to see the fans kind of have good humor about it. But I don't know. The article was kind of really shocking to me. I thought some of the things that were thrown out there are hear what you think about some of the major things that were highlighted on this thing. One of the first things I wanted to bring up was the relationship between Zack Snyder, Jeff Johns, the epicenter of everything that has changed the DCEU. So I'm interested to hear what you think in terms of the accusation that Snyder was hell-bent and almost violent to remove Johns and from any sort of association with his version of Justice League.
Well, that is such an interesting dynamic that that has been brought up multiple times. And I know over the last few years, that is something we've all discussed is this relationship that fell apart, and not so much fell apart, but there was no real camaraderie with these people at Warner Brothers and DC Films. If you don't remember, Jeff Johns was trying to make his own Superman film when Christopher Nolan's story was picked, in which he then went and got Zack Snyder to helm. And then it was Batman vs. Superman. And be it true or not, we don't have any concrete evidence to any of this, but rumors say that Jeff Johns sabotaged Batman vs. Superman, that he's the one that not only quite possibly, again, this is alleged, quite possibly leaked the original script to Marvel, that he's the reason why there was so much bad press leading up to the film, and that he's a big reason why everything Snyder was building was falling apart constantly. So there was no real, at least in these reports that we've seen and rumors that we've heard, there was no real relationship with them. Perhaps there was a working relationship. Everybody, when you work somewhere, there's always somebody that you don't necessarily get along with or you're friends with, but hey, they're a coworker. You have to work with them, and you do it. I kind of feel that's what was going on here. And then the John Berg stuff is just kind of because he was brought in later and worked alongside Jeff Johns, and I think he was more along the lines of let's boost up what Jeff Johns wants to do and get rid of what Zack Snyder's doing. So that's kind of the way I look at that whole thing. The way the article talks about Zack being manipulative, and just upset about what happened and wanting them to be removed from his cut of the film. I don't think. Remember what happened to Zack. Look at what happened. His daughter died, and they basically, in one of the lowest moments of his life, gave him so much shit and pushed him out. And yes, people will sit there and say, well, he left on his own free will. Yes, because they didn't really give him an option. If he stayed, he would have been in a much worse place. So he got pushed out. And then they mangle the movie that he was creating and talked it up and essentially, told the actors, look, you have to talk positively about this. You can't mention Zack Snyder and everything like that. So what happened, I don't think it was such a bad thing for Zack to say, look, this is going to be the hill I stand on. You take their names off of this, because they did not help get this movie made. I'm not against that. Now, the article goes on to say that it was Snyder and Fisher who started to, really hold hostage Warner Brothers to do this, with Fisher releasing these allegations on racism and harassment and just terrible working environment for all the actors. So that's the interesting part, because Ray Fisher, I always thought, like, personally, and this may be a little controversial, I always thought that Ray Fisher stuff needed to be kept separate from the Snyderverse stuff, because what he explained and what he was dealing with and what the other actors were dealing with is huge. That is terrible. And I get that the fandom of the Snyderverse is absolutely going to support Ray Fisher. Go for it. Please, I support Ray Fisher. But it always should have been kept separately. And I think people didn't do that adequately enough, which is why this article is kind of so easily to be made at this point in time. Whether true or not, I think
which is also easily I feel like both situations can get easily convoluted with each other too, because they're obviously intertwined with each other. Yes. But you are right. There is a difference in terms of what Ray Fisher's situation dictates versus what the whole backstory behind Zack Snyder and the backstory of the behind the scenes action going on with Warner Bros. And Zack. Those are two separate entities. They just happen to intertwine because they're both originating from the same property that they're shooting at the moment. But it's just something that fans. It's and like I caught myself while you were saying that, I caught myself kind of intertwining and kind of mixing together their situations when in reality I should take a step back and kind of realize that they are separate situations.
They should be, and that's how I've always put it and tried to look at it myself. I've tried to keep the two things separate because one is to be, the Snyder Cut being released was something to be excited about, to be happy and joyous about, while the Ray Fisher stuff was like, all right, we got to get pissed off and get this stuff changed in Hollywood because it's ridiculous. Right. So that's kind of why I always tried to separate it. But, this whole thing with Zack being manipulative and, whether he used Fisher or not, which I still don't think he did. But not only that, but then possibly manipulating and using Warner Brothers to add scenes or do things behind their back. Those accusations are really, really damning in a way because that could hurt Zack's reputation.
Right.
And to me, I think, okay, Zack always talked openly on the build up to the release. He talked openly about shooting in his driveway and shooting the scenes with Ben and Joe Manganiello and Jared Leto. He was always open about talking about that stuff. If he was trying to hide it and do it behind their back, he would not have been openly talking about this stuff. And that's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, okay, why now? Why is it all of a sudden a big issue now? Why would you not come out and say, back when the movie was coming out or when Zack was talking about all this, look, he did it poorly, he did it wrong. To me, it's like Warner Brothers at the time, they knew what was going on. And even in his statement that Zack makes, he's like, look, Warner Brothers knew everything. And Warner Brothers wouldn't have given me $70 million plus or whatever it was to finish this if they didn't think that it made sense for them. And whether it was financially successful or not, because we don't know, that is a gamble studios take on every single thing they make. Whether it's a new property, like look at Netflix, the amount of money they put on Stranger Things. That was a gamble. They didn't know it was going to be a hit. Ended up being a hit. These studios, they have to gamble sometimes. And the demand and the want and the excitement behind the Snyder Cut was big enough that Jason Kilar thought, hey, let's give it a go. And if he felt, you know what, the money's getting too high, we can't do it, they would have pulled the plug.
Yep.
It's that simple.
So what I find interesting about this specific accusation is that if I recall more when the theatrical version was getting released, there were rumblings that Snyder altered the suit of Superman so that depending on what the studio kind of decided upon, that they were in terms of what direction they wanted to go to with the suit, whether it would be the black and gray suit that we saw in the Snyder Cut or just the classic blue and red one, that Snyder made alterations to the suit without Warner Bros. Really knowing, leaving an open interpretation for that. So when you hear that and then you hear this, it's just interesting to kind of hear these type of things because at the end of the day, Warner Bros. Did have a chokehold on Snyder, and at the end of and I just sympathize with him in a way that if there were ways to kind of preserve his vision without them knowing, I could kind of see it. But like I said, that is totally just wild speculation. But he has been, and like you said, he was upfront and honest about those driveway shoots. He was upfront and honest that he was about to pull the whole plug because of the Green Lantern versus Martian Manhunter sort of scenario, which is a completely different part of the article that delves into that Warner Bros. Wasn't too happy with Zack trying to utilize a character that they might have had future plans with for projects for basically like 2 minutes worth of scenes. And, it's just a lack of, for me personally, just looking from the outside in, it looks like just a lack of vision on Warner Bros. Part. Like, it's okay to have multiple iterations of a character that is well known throughout the comic book lore. And I personally feel like it's a shame that it came down to Snyder kind of threatening to, I believe, completely scrap the whole cut if things weren't really going his way in terms of the cameos that were allowed in his movies. So
Yeah, what is even more ridiculous is you brought it up that Snyder had to fight for certain things still when they said yes, we'll give you the money to finish your cut to do this. They gave him the money. He should have been allowed to then make the film as he saw or deemed fit. Them to then sit there and say, oh, you can't put Green Lantern in it because we're doing something with Green Lantern. And here we are 3 years later, and they still have no Green Lantern project, even in production right now.
right.
Then the Martian Manhunter thing. Now, I think the article was wrong on Martian Manhunter compared to Green Lantern. I don't know.
Yep.
Because they're like, oh, Martian Manhunter, blah, 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 this and that.
You could argue both characters basically at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So really, I think it's so ridiculous. And then the article, moving on through the article a bit more, it then talks about how, and this isn't coming from Zack, this is coming from a third party, that he was humiliated by Joss Whedon coming in for the rewrites and the reshoots. Well, yeah, who wouldn't be humiliated in a way?
Right.
First off, okay, the way they played it back in 2017 when they announced that Joss Whedon was coming in, I will admit I was one of the ones that was like, okay, I can see it, and I
like it. Yep.
I didn't
just punch
it
up a little bit. I punch it up a little bit, with a little.
Let's not forget that he made one of the most, at that point in time, he made the most successful superhero film ever. Yep. So let's not forget that. So people were kind of excited about it, and that's fine. But when you start to get into the real issues, of course he would feel humiliated because this is his movie. This was what he wanted to make. And you're going to bring in another writer, another director to come in and kind of change.
And not just any director or writer, the director of your direct competition.
Yes. Yeah. So that to me, I mean, whether he was humiliated or not, that adds to adds to earlier where he wanted Jeff Johns and John Berg removed from the credits. Again, it's just things. This article in so many ways is like, hey, Zack Snyder did this, but then
I've noticed,
and then it justifies it.
So one thing I've noticed, writing for the Cultured Nerd, there's always a structure to your writing, and you want a beginning, middle, and end. And it's interesting where they introduce topics and then they follow up on those topics, maybe like paragraphs and paragraphs later, with the same thing. And it's like, it's very interesting how this article is constructed, just looking, not even delving into the content itself. Like, they'll tell you something about Ray Fisher in like the first line, and then they'll follow up on that line maybe like 3-4 paragraphs later. And it's like, maybe they're trying to divert your attention and kind of make up a story. And this quote should be the rallying cry for the Restore the Snyderverse fans. We should be acting like Lex Luthor, conniving and wrecking havoc, because that's ultimately what it's probably going to have to take to get what we want at the end of the day. But I love this. This was really funny. This is one of the few chuckles I actually did have.
The thing is they put it on here trying to, say this is a bad thing for Zack, that he was a Lex Luthor wreaking havoc. And to me, I'm like, well, no, it's his project. He was hired to do something and he wanted to complete it to his vision. He was then not allowed to finish it. Then he was allowed to finish it and he wanted to finish it his way. Why is that a bad thing? Like, to me, I don't get this whole idea that, oh, he got to finish it and he should just be happy that he was given what he was. No, he was given freedom to finish his story, what he wanted to do. To continue to meddle in that, I think, was just ridiculous. And for them to say that it was a bad thing for him to be, pushing for what he wanted, I just, every director pushes for what they want in their films. That's not unusual. That's not something that's bad. I don't get it. I don't. I'm sorry.
A lot of this just seems like desperation and grasping at straws at this point. As you said before, just kind of draw attention away from the digital release of Zack Snyder's Justice League. So
yeah,
it's
what about this? What about this little part that Snyder hired a digital marketing firm to boost not Justice League but Batman vs Superman fan engagement in 2016?
it's just like it's just stuff that you really wouldn't think of when you're thinking about all the backstage drama. Like, this is some of the last stuff that you really think of. And while I am a firm believer as a future person studying law that, there is two sides to a story and there's usually a middle ground for every single two-sided story, this is interesting. I don't really, if he did, it didn't really help because Batman vs Superman was still berated, and one of the few sticking points to me is that Sharknado has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than Batman vs Superman, which I can't argue. It's on paper on the site, I can't argue it. But just back to this, it's an interesting proposition, But if he did, to be honest with you, it didn't really help. These are just such drastic measures. I feel like that. I don't know, it's so out of left field. I don't know. I know that there's some legitimate research behind it that kind of actually shows shell corporations and stuff like this. But it's interesting, honestly. I'm not really too familiar with this type of research, but it's interesting to think about for sure.
So 13%, they're saying their major finding is 13% of the Snyder Cut movement accounts on social media were fake. 13%, which is up from because Twitter says that they believe in any kind of hashtag trend or whatever, that normally there's around 5, 4, 6%, somewhere around there, of fake accounts, bot accounts that are used for these events and these trending things. Or 3 to 5%, somewhere around that. Now, is that a big deal? Because you think about it, that means that 87% were not fake. And that's still a pretty high demand. It's not even like I could see, 100,000 tweets in, 24 hours. 87% of that is all there is. Okay, that's not a high number, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tweets. And if only 13% of those, it's still a high number. I just don't get, I'm going to go back to it. I don't get what anybody gains from this right now, unless there was something that was being discussed at Warner Brothers right now.
Which we will delve into in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll dive into that in a little bit. But we have that. We have, I'm going to kind of just run through some stuff here to stop me if you want to talk about it. The stolen hard drives. They're saying that Zack Snyder stole hard drives from his cut, and he said, I'm entitled to those. They're mine. And then he finally did give them back after the Snyder Cut, the Snyder Cut was released.
When I envisioned this, when I read this, I envisioned just Zack putting on Ben Affleck's Batman cowl and just
the scene
just doing what he has to do.
The scene from when Batman
when he jumped down and then got the person. Exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
But honestly, how can we talk about this, because we don't know his contract? What was in his contract? Was in his contract that he would still, through X amount of time, have be able to possess or use that footage for something? We don't know what's in his contract or what the deal was. So for them to come out here and then them to not do their due diligence and to find out, or better yet, maybe they did try and Warner Brothers like, we're not going to talk about it. You can't then put that in the article if you don't have all of the facts. That's just to me, that's just ridiculous. What else is there? There's so much to go through here.
The Godzilla versus King Kong thing is something that definitely has credence to it. This is something that I know actually happened, and is probably one of the few actual facts in this article. So
and here's the thing: I am against, and I've always been against, the fans bashing another film that isn't part of the Snyderverse or part of Snyder's vision, or right, Snyder involved, to get their voice heard. I've always been against that. Even with the Flash movie that's upcoming, I've been against it, because you're then taking away from those filmmakers, those creators, those artists, those actors. You're taking away the hype and excitement that they have and that people have for them for this film. So I've always been against that. And there's a part of me that I think, well, you did all this research to find bots for this movement. Has any research been done to see, hey, could anybody on the other side of this possibly have set up events or moments against to hurt the Snyder fandom? Could Jeff Johns have hired a company or had somebody go out there and start
Injecting
ragging on
bots.
Godzilla vs Kong or Suicide Squad
Yep.
to hype up the Snyder fan base? And just like normal sheep, they're gonna run and say, "Oh, cool! There's an event. Let's go!" And they go and start tweeting it.
Yep.
Did they research that at all? It comes
Which is
down.
interesting because I follow the main release the Snyder Cut Twitter account that's morphed into Restore the Snyderverse Twitter account, and not once. And I remember a majority of the events that we've done for like the hashtag events, and not once was there ever a posting for that one saying, "Let's review bomb this movie, that movie." There was actually a warning sign to not do that. So that's something that, I know it happened and it occurred, but to your point, the research that we're being introduced to, was there any research done into these review bombings, and were they bots? Was it exactly what you said? Was it Lex Luthor, aka Jeff Johns, conniving and being Lex Luthor over there? So part of me thinks that there's more truth to that statement than we know, but it's a mess. It's truthfully a mess, and so random. It's not even and just seeing Ray Fisher respond here.
So this one here, I'm going to bring this up because we mentioned it a little bit ago, that they were blaming Fisher and Snyder for working in tandem. Snyder said that was not true. That did not happen. And then they supposedly reached out to Ray Fisher to find out, which they did. They started showing the emails that they sent to Fisher and his team, but they didn't show the whole picture that, they gave him like 6 hours, 7 hours, something like that to respond, and started, there was a Twitter war going on the other day, which I thought was crazy. But, Ray Fisher gets pulled into it, and he's like, look, they never declined to comment to Rolling Stone because they never got to it. They didn't get the emails in time because they only had X amount of time to do it. And I get that happens with journalism. I get that. But you need to put that in the article. We reached out and we did not hear back from them. You don't lie and say they declined to comment, because that then looks bad on Ray Fisher, that he's trying to hide something, when that's not what happened. They just did not get back to them prior. So that's how you would put that in the article. And that's the thing. This author needs to take this, and whether they're a good person or not, I don't even know who it is. They need to take this as a learning tool, because they really screwed up and did some things that you shouldn't do as a journalist. And a shame on Rolling Stone for their editor.
A prominent publication. I'm very surprised that something of that weaves this type of narrative, and this type of janky paragraph positioning, and trying to make the topics all related in a negative light, when in reality, if you really put the pieces together in the right way, it will make more sense in more of a positive light. And to the naked eye, this is going to be another black eye to the movement. And the article mentions that the chances of the Snyderverse are dead, and that Hamada will be staying on, and so is Jeff Johns, and things of that nature, which is stuff that we still have not gotten confirmation on either way. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see until Warner Bros. Discovery kind of just really takes a deep dive into everything. But if this doesn't drive the attention of David Zaslav into fixing whatever the hell is going on with this black hole of the DCEU, I don't know really what will. I wouldn't be surprised if Zaslav has already started delving into this sooner rather than later.
Because you have to think of it this way. This came out literally 24 hours before the film drops digitally. And at that point in time, they have a marketing campaign pushing this. This article comes out to tarnish the release of that, which hurts Warner Brothers' bottom line in making money. Whether it did or not is to be seen. But that was the intent. The intent was to say, don't support this person, don't support this movement, don't support this film. That was the intent. And if Jeff Johns and or John Berg and or Walter Hamada, which I'm not saying he was involved, but if any of them were involved with this article, if anybody was, they need to be held accountable. And I hope Zaslav is able to find and investigate and find out who was saying this, because they obviously were talking to somebody who had knowledge of the situation that was going on behind the scenes. So who was it? Is it Toby Emmerich? I mean, he's gone now, so could it have been him? Could he be the one giving this information?
To be honest with you, I wish for this situation at this point, in the beginning, I really was just rooting for everything to go our way with restoring the Snyderverse. At the end of the day, now I'm at the point where I just want to know the truth. Like you said, it's almost like they're self-sabotaging themselves, knowing that, digital release of Zack Snyder's Justice League maybe a year and a couple months after it was released on HBO Max won't break the bank for them. And I think that's their type of thinking towards that, which is a shame. It seems, while the merger did happen, there are still some bugs to get out of the system for sure. So it's going to be a long and grueling process, and patience is definitely a virtue. And I think that's my main takeaway from the article is that, yep, we've taken steps since the Snyder Cut has been released, but we have a long way to go. There are a lot of people still in positions that could prevent what could happen, and this article is a sobering reminder of that, just because there are definitely people involved in this that are on Warner Bros. Side for sure. So.
And just to finish off the talk here, I want to say one of the things that made me chuckle or laugh a little bit was the complaint that the $73 million spent on this film, there was $73 million spent while employees lost their job during COVID. That is a stupid ass comment, because what did that $73 million go to? People working, finishing a product. It wasn't like they just gave $73 million to one person and they pocketed it. No, they used that $73 million to pay people to finish the special effects, to act, to do this, to do that. That's what that $73 million went to. So to sit there and say, oh, they wasted $73 million while people were losing their jobs. No, they spent $73 million for people to have a job. When you think about it, now maybe it wasn't the people that you want to have a job, whoever was making this remark, but people didn't, there was people working from this money. And that just, like, how stupid can you be? Like, for the author to actually write that in there and say, yeah. Like, do you have any common sense? Like, that just baffles me. I'm sorry. It just, I gotta look who the author is, because it legitimately is pissing me off now. Thinking about
the tweet, was the author tagged, or was that somebody else?
Tatiana Siegel.
Yeah.
That's who it says. So who is Tatiana Siegel? It doesn't. She's a senior writer at Rolling. Senior writer. Oh man. Yeah, that's rough, Tatiana. I'm sorry, but look, I'm not going to say I'm the best writer or author or journalist or anything like that.
But there is a writer's moral, I would like to say, and I definitely believe that there's a line that was crossed for sure. But whether there's repercussions for that remains to be seen. But just tying a bow on this on my end, I definitely think that the truth needs to be found out for sure before I believe anything in the DCEU moves forward, whether that's the Hamadaverse, Snyderverse, anything. I believe getting to the root of what's systematically wrong with the people in charge is going to be the biggest step in everything that would lead up to any sort of announcements. And hopefully it can be done, but for right now, they're still in evaluation mode over at Discovery. So hopefully they can find the root of the problems, and restore relationships with talent, because it's definitely something that has strained a lot of people's relationships with Warner Bros. Over the years.
Absolutely. Well, Anybody who's listening, let us know in the comments. Hit us up on social media. What do you think about all of this whole entire Zack Snyder hit piece by the Rolling Stone? What are you shocked? Are you pissed off? Are you whatever? Let us know. I want to hear your thoughts on all of it. Obviously, it's been big news this week. Everybody's been talking about it on Twitter and everything. But I want to hear your thoughts.